The Alpha King had his claws in my shoulder before I could scream. Blood everywhere. Moon burning overhead. And I smiled. Everyone told me to hide what I was. Everyone said if they found out I would die. But they were wrong. Because the thing living inside my bones was not a weakness. It was a weapon. And the most powerful alpha in the territories just made the worst mistake of his life. He thought he was the hunter. He thought I was prey. He had no idea he just walked into a cage built from shadows and rage and something so dark that his ancestors created monsters like him just to keep things like me buried. My name is unimportant. What I am is everything. And tonight, the Alpha King is going to learn why some creatures were never meant to be found. This is the story of how I went from hunted to hunter. How I brought the most feared alpha to his knees. And how I discovered that the real monster was never me. It was what they tried to turn me into. Stay until the end. Because the twist will shatter everything you think you know about power, darkness, and what happens when a caged animal finally breaks free. The Alpha King thought I was his prey. Until he realized he was trapped in my cage. The Alpha King's claws tore through my shoulder before I even heard him move. Blood sprayed across the frozen ground, black in the moonlight. I did not scream. Screaming was what prey did, and I had stopped being prey the night I learned what lived inside my bones. "Run," he growled, his voice like gravel scraping against iron. His eyes were molten gold, burning with the thrill of the hunt. Behind him, his pack circled through the trees, their shadows stretching long and hungry across the snow. I could smell them. Wet fur, hot breath, the metallic tang of anticipation. They thought this was a game. They thought I was just another rogue wolf, caught trespassing on sacred ground. They had no idea what they had cornered. I pressed my hand against the wound, felt the heat of my own blood soaking through my fingers. The pain was sharp, bright, almost beautiful. "I said run," the Alpha King repeated, stepping closer. He was massive, even in human form. His bare chest was carved with scars, each one a story of survival. His dark hair fell into his eyes, but it did nothing to soften the predator staring out from behind them. "No," I whispered. The word hung in the air between us like a challenge. His head tilted, confusion flickering across his face for just a heartbeat. Then his lips curled back, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too long. "You dare refuse me." The trees seemed to hold their breath. Even the wind stopped moving through the branches. I smiled and I knew it looked wrong. I could feel it stretching too wide, pulling at the corners of my mouth. "I am not refusing you," I said softly. "I am giving you a chance to leave." He laughed then, a sound like thunder rolling through a canyon. The pack joined in, their howls rising into the night sky. But I did not flinch. I had heard worse sounds than laughter. I had heard the screaming. "You think you can threaten me?" he asked, still grinning. "You think a lone wolf can stand against a king?" "I am not a lone wolf," I said. The wound on my shoulder stopped. Bleeding. I felt it close, felt the skin knit back together with a sensation like fire ants crawling beneath my flesh. His smile faltered. "I am something else entirely," I continued. The bones in my spine began to shift. Not the familiar crack and pop of a standard transformation. This was different. This was the sound of a cage door opening. The Alpha King took a step back. His instincts were finally catching up to his arrogance. "What are you?" he demanded. The scent of pine was suddenly overwhelming, mixing with the smell of my blood and something older, something that had no name in any language spoken above ground. "I am the thing your ancestors locked away," I said. My voice was changing, dropping lower, resonating with something that made the trees shudder. I am the reason your pack has rules about the deep woods. The transformation took me then, not into a wolf but into something that wolves had nightmares about. My skin split open but there was no blood. Only darkness pouring out, thick and viscous like oil. My bones did not just break and reform. They multiplied. Extra joints appeared where none should exist. My spine elongated, vertebrae stacking like the segments of some ancient, terrible creature. The Alpha King shifted instantly, his human form exploding into a massive gray wolf, his survival instincts finally overriding his pride. But it was too late. The cage was already open, and what stepped out was not a wolf at all. I rose on legs that bent in too many directions. My mouth opened, revealing row after row of teeth that went back and back into a throat that had no end. My eyes multiplied across my face like spider eyes, each one reflecting the moon in fractured, horrible beauty. The pack scattered. They ran like rabbits, their howls of aggression turning to yelps of pure terror. But the Alpha King stood his ground. He was brave, I would give him that. Brave or stupid. Perhaps both. He lunged at me, his jaws aimed for what used to be my throat. I caught him mid-air. My hands had become something else, something with too many fingers, each one tipped with claws that were not made of keratin but of solidified shadow. I held him there, suspended, his wolf form twisting and snapping. "You hunted me," I said, and my voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating from the trees, from the ground, from the very air itself. "You thought I was weak because I ran." I brought him closer, until his golden eyes were level with my many. "But I was not running from you," I whispered. "I was leading you away from them." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed immediately by horror. "You wanted me alone," he realized. "I needed you alone," I corrected. The darkness that made up my new form began to wrap around him, not to kill but to bind. "Your pack has been hunting my kind for generations," I continued. "Tracking us, trapping us, using our blood for your rituals to make your wolves stronger." He struggled harder, but the shadows only tightened. "Tonight that ends," I said. "Tonight, the hunter becomes the hunted." I could have killed him then. It would have been easy. But death was too simple, too quick. "I am going to make you a deal, Alpha King," I said, lowering him to the ground but keeping the shadows wrapped tight around his wolf form. "You are going to call off your hunts." His growl was low, defiant. "You are going to spread the word to every pack in every territory," I continued, ignoring his resistance. "The deep woods are forbidden now, not because of old superstition, but because I am awake." I leaned closer until my breath, cold as winter night, washed over his face. "And if I catch even one of your wolves near my territory again, I will not show mercy. I will show them exactly what their ancestors were so afraid of, that they needed to create monsters like you to protect themselves from monsters like me." I released him then, the shadows peeling away. He dropped to the ground, still in wolf form, still trembling. I began to change back, pulling the darkness inside, folding the extra bones and teeth and eyes back into the human shell I wore. It hurt worse going in than coming out. It always did. When I stood before him again, just a girl with blood on her shirt and bare feet in the snow, he finally shifted back to human. He knelt there, naked and shaking, staring up at me with an expression I had never seen on an alpha's face before. Fear. Pure, undiluted fear. "What are you?" he asked again, his voice barely a whisper. "A mistake," I answered honestly. "Something that should not exist. Something your kind created when you mixed wolf blood with witch magic and shadow realm essence, trying to make the perfect weapon." I looked down at my hands, small and human and harmless looking. But you did not account for what happens when a weapon decides it does not want to be used anymore. He said nothing. What could he say? Go home, Alpha King, I told him, turning away. Go home and remember this night. Remember that you are only king because I allow it. I walked into the trees, leaving him there in the clearing. Behind me, I heard him finally move, heard him stumble to his feet and run. The sound of his retreat was sweet, sweeter than any hunt I had ever known. Because for the first time in my short, terrible life, I was not the one running. I was the thing they ran from. And that made all the difference. The forest welcomed me back into its shadows. The trees whispered their approval, their branches creaking like old bones. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. But it was not a howl of dominance or territory. It was a warning that would spread from pack to pack, territory to territory. The cage was open. The monster was free. And the Alpha King had learned what all predators eventually discover when they hunt the wrong prey. Sometimes the thing you trap is not trapped at all. Sometimes it is exactly where it wants to be. And by the time you realize the truth, the door has already closed behind you. The Alpha King returned to his territory 3 hours before dawn. I knew because I felt the shift in the forest when he crossed back over his own borders. The trees told me everything. They always had, ever since the transformation that made me into this thing. I sat on a fallen log near the stream that marked the edge of my claimed territory. My territory was small, barely 20 acres of dense forest that most packs avoided anyway. The ground here was wrong, they said. The soil too dark, the water too cold, the shadows too thick even at midday. They were right to avoid it. This place had soaked up too much of what I was, and now it reflected back something that made even animals nervous. I dipped my bare feet into the stream, watching the water turn black around my toes before clearing again. The cold did not bother me anymore. Nothing about the natural world bothered me because I was no longer natural myself. The wound on my shoulder had healed completely, leaving not even a scar. That was another thing that made me different from normal werewolves. They scarred. I did not. My body refused to keep evidence of damage, as if acknowledging injury would be admitting weakness. I closed my eyes and reached out with the sense that had no name. It was not sight or smell or hearing, but something that let me feel the pulse of everything living within my territory. The deer bedded down near the northern ridge. The fox hunting mice in the hollow oak. The owl watching from the high branches. And something else. Something that did not belong. My eyes snapped open. There were 3 of them, moving carefully through the underbrush about half a mile east. Werewolves, but not from the Alpha King's pack. I knew his scent now, had memorized the particular musk that marked all his wolves. These were different. Lighter somehow, with an undercurrent of something chemical and sharp. City wolves, I realized. Wolves who lived among humans, who wore cologne and drove cars and pretended to be civilized. They were heading directly toward me. I stood slowly, brushing dirt from my jeans. My shirt was still torn and bloodstained from earlier, but I did not bother changing. Let them see what their Alpha King had tried to do. Let them wonder what happened to him. I did not run or hide. Instead, I walked toward them, my bare feet silent on the forest floor. The trees bent slightly as I passed, their branches reaching down as if trying to touch me. I had stopped questioning why the forest treated me like something sacred, or something feared. Perhaps there was no difference. I found them in a small clearing where moonlight broke through the canopy in silver streams. They had stopped, forming a triangle formation. Professional hunters, then. The one in front was a woman with short blonde hair and eyes like chips of ice. She wore tactical gear, all black, with silver buckles that gleamed. Silver. They came prepared to fight werewolves. quaint. The two behind her were men, twins by the look of them, with the same sharp features and calculating expressions. All three had their hands near their weapons, but none had drawn yet. "You are trespassing," I said simply, stopping about 20 feet away. The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. "You are the rogue," she said. It was not a question. "I am not a rogue," I replied. "I am exactly where I am supposed to be. In unclaimed territory," one of the twins added. His voice was smooth, educated. "This land belongs to no pack." "It belongs to me," I said. The other twin laughed, but it was a nervous sound. He had better instincts than his brother. "One wolf cannot claim territory," the woman said, taking a step forward. "Even the Alpha King respects the old laws." "The Alpha King learned tonight that some laws are older than his," I told her. Her eyes narrowed. "We heard what happened," she said carefully. "We heard you attacked him." "He attacked me," I corrected. "I simply showed him why that was a mistake." "You threatened the Alpha King of the Western Territories," she continued, her hand now resting openly on the silver knife at her belt. "That makes you a threat to all packs." "No," I said softly. "That makes him weak." The insult hung in the air like smoke. In wolf culture, calling an alpha weak was grounds for a death challenge. The woman's hand tightened on her knife. "We represent the Council of Elders," she said, her voice formal now. "We have been sent to investigate the disturbance and determine if you pose a threat to pack law." The Council of Elders. I had heard of them, the ancient wolves who supposedly governed all packs, who maintained the old ways and settled disputes between territories. They were powerful, connected, and utterly convinced of their own authority. "I pose a threat to anyone who threatens me," I said. "Beyond that, I have no interest in pack politics." "That is not how this works," the first twin said, finally finding his courage. "You cannot simply exist outside pack law." "Watch me," I replied. The woman drew her knife in one smooth motion. It was beautiful actually, the way the silver caught the moonlight. "You will come with us," she said. "The council will determine your fate." "No," I said. "I will not." The second twin moved then, faster than human fast but not quite full wolf speed. He tried to flank me, to get behind me while my attention was on the woman. I did not even turn. I just reached out with the shadows. They rose from the ground like black water, wrapping around his ankles. He fell hard, his cry of surprise cut short as the darkness covered his mouth. The first twin shifted immediately, his bones cracking and reforming in seconds. His wolf form was sleek, gray with silver markings, built for speed rather than power. He lunged at me from the left. The woman threw her knife at the same moment, aiming for my throat. I caught the knife in mid-air. The silver burned my palm, but I did not let go. The pain was interesting, sharp and clean, so different from the usual numbness. The wolf's teeth snapped inches from my face. I grabbed him by the throat with my free hand, the one not holding the knife. His momentum carried us both backward, but I twisted as we fell, using his own weight to slam him into the ground. The impact drove the air from his lungs. I pressed the silver knife against his chest, right over his rapidly beating heart. "Silver hurts wolves," I said conversationally. "But I am not entirely a wolf, am I?" The woman was shifting now, her human form rippling and changing. But I was faster. I released the wolf beneath me and threw the knife. It buried itself in the tree trunk 3 inches from her head, cutting through her blonde hair. She froze, half transformed, her eyes wide. "I do not want to kill you," I said, standing up. The shadows released the second twin, who gasped and scrambled away from me. But I will if you force me to. The wolf at my feet shifted back to human, coughing and holding his throat. There would be bruises there tomorrow, finger-shaped marks that would make him remember. "What are you?" the woman whispered, finally completing her shift back to human form. Everyone kept asking me that, as if giving it a name would make it less terrifying. "I am what happens when you play with forces you do not understand," I said. "I am the consequence of ambition." I walked over to the tree and pulled out the silver knife. It had stopped burning my hand, the wound already closing. I tossed it back to her. She caught it reflexively, but her hands were shaking. "Tell your council of elders that I want no part of their politics," I said. "Tell them I claim this territory and this territory alone. Tell them that if they leave me in peace, I will leave them in peace." "And if they do not?" the first twin asked, his voice hoarse. I smiled and I watched all three of them flinch. "Then I will show them what I showed the Alpha King," I said simply. "I will show them that some cages were built for a reason. And now that cage is open." The woman pulled on her clothes with shaking hands. Her companions did the same, none of them taking their eyes off me. "The council will not accept this," she said, but there was doubt in her voice now. "Then the council will learn the same lesson," I replied. "Go now before I change my mind about letting you leave." They went. They ran, actually, their dignity abandoned in favor of survival. I watched them disappear into the trees, their heartbeats fading into the distance. Only when they were completely gone did I allow myself to feel the exhaustion. The transformations took energy, even the partial ones. And holding back the full change, keeping the monster caged while only using its shadow, that took even more. I sat down hard, my back against the tree that still held the indent from the silver knife. My hand had healed, but I could still feel the ghost of the burn. Silver was one of the few things that still hurt me. That and iron and fire, and certain old magics that predated even the wolves. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east, gray dawn creeping in to replace the night. I needed to find shelter before full sunrise. The sun did not hurt me, not exactly, but it made the thing inside me restless. It preferred the dark, the cold, the spaces between shadows. I stood and began walking back toward the cave I had claimed as a temporary home. It was small, barely large enough to lie down in, but it was deep enough that sunlight never reached the back. That was all I needed. But I had only gone a few dozen yards when I felt it. Another presence, but this one was not hostile. This one was familiar. The Alpha King stepped out from behind an ancient oak, still in human form, wearing hastily donned jeans and nothing else. His chest was covered in scars that looked silver in the pre-dawn light. "You did not go home," I observed. "I started to," he admitted. His voice was rough, tired. "But then I felt them enter the forest." "You felt them?" "I have been Alpha King for 10 years, he said. "I know when wolves enter the territories I protect, even if they do not belong to me." "These woods are not yours to protect," I reminded him. "No," he agreed. "But they border mine, and the council sending scouts without my permission is a direct insult." I studied him carefully. His golden eyes were clearer now, the predator in them tempered by something that looked almost like respect. "You came to warn me," I realized. "I came to see if the council would be stupid enough to try to take you," he corrected. "And they were." "Why do you care?" I asked. He was silent for a long moment, his gaze drifting past me to the clearing where I had confronted the council's wolves. "Because you spared me," he said finally. "You could have killed me tonight, but you did not." "That was strategic, not mercy," I told him. Was it? He challenged. Because from where I was standing, trapped in your shadows, I saw something in your eyes. What did you see? Loneliness, he said simply. The word hit harder than any physical blow could have. I turned away from him, suddenly unable to hold his gaze. You are projecting, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I am observing, he countered. You are powerful, more powerful than anything I have ever encountered, but you are also alone. By choice, I snapped. Is it? He asked. Or is it because you are afraid of what you are? I am not afraid of anything, I said, and the shadows around us thickened in response to my anger. The Alpha King did not flinch. Everyone is afraid of something, he said quietly. Even monsters. Especially monsters. I wanted to argue, to deny it, to show him exactly how wrong he was. But the words would not come. 'Cause he was right. I was terrified. Terrified of what I was, what I could become, what I might do if I ever lost control completely. Why are you here? I asked instead, changing the subject. I told you, the council insulted me by sending wolves into these woods without permission. No, I said, turning back to face him. Why are you really here? He met my eyes, and for the first time since we met, I saw something other than predator or prey. I saw another creature who understood what it meant to wear a crown made of fear. Because I want to understand, he said. Understand what? How you became what you are. Why you are here alone, in the one piece of forest even my wolves will not enter. What you want. I want to be left alone, I said automatically. Liar, he replied, but there was no malice in it. If you wanted to be alone, you would have gone deeper into the wilderness, farther from packed territories. Instead, you claimed land right on the border of mine. I had no answer for that. Mostly because I had not consciously realized it until he said it. You want connection, he continued. But you are afraid to reach for it because every time you get close to someone, they see what you really are and they run. Stop, I said, but my voice was barely a whisper. The council wolves will report back, he said, changing topics with practiced ease. They will tell the elders about you, about what you can do. Let them, I said, grateful for the shift. The elders will not be satisfied with a report, he continued. They will want proof, want to see you for themselves. Then I will show them the same thing I showed you. That might not be enough, he warned. The council has resources, connections to covens and hunter guilds. They can bring in witches who specialize in binding creatures like you. Like you. Not like us. Like you. The distinction was not lost on me. Are you trying to frighten me? Yes. I am trying to help you, he said. Why would you help me? I demanded. I threatened you, humiliated you in front of your own instincts. Yes, he agreed. And in doing so, you taught me something I have not felt in a very long time. What? Humility, he said. I have been Alpha King so long that I forgot what it feels like to be prey. You reminded me. The sun was rising now, true sunrise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The Alpha King's skin seemed to glow in the early light, his scars turning to silver threads. I should go, I said. The day makes me uncomfortable. Will you consider an alliance? He asked suddenly. I stared at him. An alliance. My pack's protection in exchange for your assistance when threats arise that require your particular skills. You want me to be your weapon, I said flatly. I want you to be my equal, he corrected. A partner, not a tool. I do not believe you. I am not asking you to believe me yet, he said. I am asking you to think about it. The council will come for you, one way or another. When they do, would you rather face them alone, or with the Western Territories at your back?" He turned to leave, then paused. "My name is Kale," he said without looking back. "In case you were wondering." Then he was gone, moving through the forest with the easy grace of someone who had run these woods his entire life. I stood there in the growing light, processing everything that had just happened. An alliance with the Alpha King. It was absurd. It was dangerous. It was possibly the smartest option available. I made my way back to my cave, my mind churning with possibilities and problems. The sun climbed higher, and I retreated into the darkness at the back of the cave. But sleep did not come easily. Because for the first time since I became this thing, this monster wearing a girl's skin, someone had looked at me and seen something other than a threat. Someone had seen potential. And that was more terrifying than any silver knife or council judgment. Because potential meant hope. And hope was the most dangerous thing a monster could feel. I woke to the sound of screaming. Not human screaming, but the high-pitched shriek of a rabbit caught in a trap. The sound pierced through the layers of sleep and stone, dragging me back to consciousness. I sat up too fast, my head spinning from the sudden movement. The cave was dark, completely dark, which meant night had fallen while I slept. I had lost an entire day. The screaming continued, sharp and desperate, coming from somewhere north of my territory. I crawled out of the cave, my body still sluggish from sleep. The forest was alive with night sounds, but underneath them all was something wrong. A scent I did not recognize, acrid and bitter, like burning plastic mixed with rotting meat. I stood and followed the smell, moving faster as my body fully woke. The screaming had stopped, but that only made me move faster. Silence after screaming was never a good sign. I found the source in a small hollow about a quarter-mile from my cave. The rabbit hung from a thin wire, its body twisted at an unnatural angle. Dead but still warm. Around it, scratched into the dirt in a perfect circle, were symbols I recognized from the brief education I had received before everything went wrong. Summoning circles. Binding sigils. Trap magic. Someone had used the rabbit as bait. Had set a trap meant for something much larger than a rabbit. Meant for me. I took a step back, but I was already too close. The symbols flared to life, glowing with sickly green light. The air inside the circle thickened, became viscous like honey, pulling at me. I tried to move, but my feet would not obey. The shadows I normally commanded did not respond. The thing inside me, the monster, threw itself against my ribs, trying to break free, but something about the magic held it trapped. "Fascinating," a voice said from the darkness beyond the circle. A woman stepped into view, older than the council wolves, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore robes that marked her as a witch, covered in embroidered sigils that hurt to look at directly. Behind her came two more figures, younger, wearing similar robes but in darker colors. Apprentices, I realized. "The council said you were part wolf," the older witch continued, walking around the outside of the circle. Her eyes studied me like I was a specimen under glass. "But this is much more interesting." I tried to speak, but my jaw was locked shut. "Oh, do not bother trying to break the binding," she said, almost kindly. "This circle was designed specifically for shadow creatures. Your particular brand of darkness is quite contained, I assure you." One of the apprentices, a young man with nervous hands, pulled out a silver collar attached to a chain. "Is it safe to approach, Magistra?" he asked. The older witch, the Magistra, tilted her head, considering. "Safe enough," she said. "The binding should hold even if she transforms." "Should?" the other apprentice asked, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes. "Nothing is certain with creatures of mixed origin," the Magistra replied. But I have bound demons and ancient spirits. This should be well within my capabilities. The word repeated in my mind like a drumbeat. Should hold. Should be safe. Should work. All the ways this could go wrong. The young man approached the circle's edge. The silver collar held out in front of him like a shield. I watched him come closer, my body still frozen, my mind racing. The collar would be the end of everything. Silver suppressed werewolf abilities, and whatever other properties it had been enhanced with would likely suppress the shadow creature as well. Once that collar was around my neck, I would be helpless. He reached the edge of the circle, preparing to step over the glowing line. His foot crossed the barrier. The moment his skin touched the air inside the circle, something shifted. The magic had been designed for me, attuned to my specific energy. It did not recognize him as an authorized presence. The circle reacted. Green light exploded outward, and the young man screamed, a sound not unlike the rabbit. He flew backward, his body convulsing as electricity arced across his skin. He hit a tree and did not move. "Fool!" the magistra hissed, but she was already moving, her hands weaving patterns in the air. The circle's magic stabilized, the violent green fading back to a steady glow. The female apprentice ran to her companion, checking his pulse. "He lives," she called out, relief evident in her voice. "Barely," the magistra said coldly. "He should have waited for permission." She turned back to me, her expression calculating. "It seems the circle is more reactive than I anticipated," she said. "We will need a different approach." The female apprentice returned, leaving her companion unconscious against the tree. "What do we do, Magistra?" she asked. "We wait," the older witch replied. "The binding will weaken her over time, drain her energy until she is too exhausted to resist. Then we can approach safely." They were going to starve me out. The circle prevented me from moving, from accessing my power, from doing anything except stand here and wait. Hours passed. The moon moved across the sky, indifferent to my predicament. My legs began to ache from standing in one position. The thing inside me continued to throw itself against the invisible walls, growing more frantic with each failed attempt. The magistra and her apprentice had made camp just outside the circle's range, close enough to watch but far enough to be safe. The unconscious apprentice still had not moved. "Tell me," the magistra said, breaking the silence. "How did you come to be?" I could not answer, my jaw still locked. "Oh, forgive me," she said, waving her hand. The binding loosened slightly, just enough for me to speak. "Why do you care?" I managed to rasp out. My throat was dry, my voice rough. "Professional curiosity," she replied. "I have studied creatures of darkness for 40 years, and I have never encountered anything quite like you. You are not demon, though you carry their taint. You are not spirit, though you command shadows as they do. You are not holy werewolf, though that blood runs through you. So what are you?" "A mistake," I said, repeating what I had told Kale. "Yes, but whose mistake?" she pressed. "And how was it made? Why does it matter?" "Yes. Because if I understand how you were created, I can potentially create more," she said simply. "Or destroy you more efficiently." The honesty was almost refreshing. "The council wants me destroyed." "Yes. The council wants you contained," she corrected. "But I see potential for much more than that. There are those who would pay handsomely for a creature like you. Governments, private collectors, certain organizations that deal in unique assets." She was talking about selling me. The realization settled over me like ice water. "You are not here on behalf of the council," I said slowly. The magistra smiled. The council hired me to assess and contain the threat, she said. What I do with that threat after containment is my own business. They paid you to capture me, and now you plan to auction me off to the highest bidder. Precisely, she said. You are a quick study. I like that. Intelligent assets are worth more. The female apprentice looked uncomfortable but said nothing. She would not challenge her teacher, I realized. Not even over something like this. The Alpha King will come, I said, surprised to find I believed it. The Alpha King has enough problems of his own, the Magistra replied. Do you really think he will risk his position, his pack, for a creature he met only yesterday? I had no answer for that. 'Cause she was right. Why would Kale risk anything for me? He had offered an alliance, but that was before his council sent witches to capture me. He had his own politics to navigate, his own people to protect. I was nothing to him except a potential weapon or a potential threat. More time passed. The moon reached its zenith and began its descent toward morning. I could feel my strength draining, could feel the binding pulling energy from me like a slow leak. The monster inside was quieting, its struggles becoming weaker. Soon I would not have the strength to resist even if the binding broke. The Magistra watched me with the patience of someone who had done this many times before. You are fading, she observed. Another hour, perhaps 2, and you will collapse. Then we can transport you somewhere more secure. Somewhere the council will never find you. You will regret this, I said, but the words had no strength behind them. I doubt that very much, she replied. A howl split the night air. It came from the east, deep and resonant, carrying across the forest like a wave. The Magistra's head snapped toward the sound, her expression shifting from confidence to concern. That is the Alpha King's call, the female apprentice said nervously. He is summoning his pack. Another howl answered, then another, then a dozen more, until the forest was alive with the sound of wolves responding to their alpha's command. The Magistra stood, her hands already moving through defensive patterns. This complicates things, she said. Magistra, we should leave, the apprentice urged. The pack will be here within minutes. We are not leaving without our prize, the Magistra snapped. Prepare binding chains. We will take her now, ready or not. The apprentice hesitated, then pulled silver chains from her bag, chains covered in more of the glowing sigils. But before she could approach the circle, a massive gray wolf burst from the tree line. Kale in his full alpha form. He was enormous, easily twice the size of a normal wolf, his golden eyes blazing even in the darkness. Behind him came his pack, dozens of wolves pouring into the clearing like a flood. They surrounded the Magistra and her apprentice, a living wall of fur and teeth and barely contained violence. Kale shifted back to human form, his transformation smooth and effortless. He stood naked and unconcerned, radiating authority that needed no clothing to emphasize it. You are interfering with council business, Alpha King, the Magistra said, her voice steady despite being surrounded. The council gave me no notification of which involvement on my borders, Kale replied, his voice cold. That is a violation of pack law and witch covenant. The situation required discretion, she said. The situation required permission, he countered. Permission you did not seek because you knew I would refuse. The Magistra's jaw tightened. This creature is a threat to all supernatural communities, she said. The council determined that extraordinary measures were necessary. The council does not have authority here, Kale said. These are my territories, and you will release her immediately. Or what? The Magistra challenged. You will attack a registered member of the Witch Covenant. That would bring sanctions down on your entire pack. You would lose your seat on the council, your territory, everything." Kale smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "You assume I care about those things more than I care about protecting what is mine." "She is not yours," the Magistra said. "She is now," Kale replied. He turned to face me, his golden eyes meeting mine across the circle. "If you will have me," he added quietly. The words hung in the air between us. "N'offer. Ois." I could refuse, could tell him I wanted nothing to do with him or his pack or his protection. I could maintain my isolation, my independence, my carefully constructed walls. Or I could accept, could choose alliance over solitude. Could take the first step toward something I had convinced myself I did not need. Connection. "Yes," I whispered, the word barely audible. But Kale heard it. His smile shifted, became something warmer, more genuine. He turned back to the Magistra. "You heard her," he said. "She accepts my protection. That means attacking her is attacking my pack. Are you prepared to start a war with the Western Territories over a bounty, Witch?" The Magistra's face was a mask of fury, but she was calculating, weighing options. A fight here would likely end with her death or capture. The Alpha King had brought his full pack, and wolves had an instinctive hatred of magic that trapped and bound. They would tear her apart with enthusiasm. "The Council will hear about this," she said finally. "I am certain they will," Kale agreed. "And I look forward to explaining to them how one of their hired witches attempted to kidnap and sell a creature under my protection. I wonder how the Witch Covenant will feel about that." The Magistra's expression went carefully blank. She had not expected him to know about her true intentions. "Break the circle," Kale ordered. "Now." For a long moment, the Magistra did not move. Then, with visible reluctance, she began unweaving the spell. The green light flickered and died. The binding released me all at once, and I collapsed. My legs would not hold me, my energy completely depleted. Strong hands caught me before I hit the ground. Kale had moved faster than I could track, crossing the distance between us in a heartbeat. He lifted me easily, cradling me against his chest. I should have protested, should have insisted I could walk. But I could not. I was too tired, too drained, too overwhelmed by everything that had happened. "Get out of my territory," Kale told the Magistra, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Take your apprentices and your dark intentions, and do not return. If I see you on my lands again, I will not be so merciful." The Magistra gathered her unconscious apprentice with a levitation spell, her remaining student helping to guide the floating body. They disappeared into the trees, moving quickly despite their burdens. The pack watched them go, several wolves following at a distance to ensure they actually left. Kale looked down at me, his expression difficult to read in the darkness. "You came," I said, still trying to process everything. "Of course I came," he replied. "I told you, you are under my protection now." "Why?" "Yes. Why risk all of this for me?" He was quiet for a moment, his arms tightening slightly around me. "Because when I looked into your eyes tonight in that clearing, when you had me trapped and could have killed me," he said slowly, "I saw something I did not expect." "What?" "Myself," he admitted. "I saw someone who has been alone for too long, someone carrying burdens too heavy to bear, someone pretending that isolation is strength. And I realized that I did not want to leave you to face that alone." The honesty in his voice broke something inside me. Some wall I had built so carefully, so deliberately to keep everyone out. "I am dangerous," I whispered. "So am I," he replied. We can be dangerous together. The pack began to disperse, some shifting back to human form, others staying as wolves to patrol the perimeter. Kale carried me through the forest, moving with easy confidence even in the darkness. "Where are we going?" I asked. "My territory," he said. "You need rest, real rest, in a place that is protected. Your pack will not accept me." "My pack will accept who I tell them to accept," he said firmly. "And anyone who has a problem with it can challenge me for the position. That is a risk. Everything worth having is a risk," he said. We walked in silence for a while, the forest gradually changing as we crossed from neutral territory into pack lands. The trees here were healthier, the undergrowth less wild, marked by the presence of wolves who used these paths regularly. "Kale," I said quietly. "Yes. Thank you." He looked down at me, surprise flickering across his features. "You do not need to thank me for doing what is right." "Maybe not," I agreed. "But I am thanking you anyway." His expression softened, some of the Alpha King authority melting away to reveal the man underneath. "You are welcome," he said simply. The pack house came into view as dawn began to break, a massive structure built from stone and wood that seemed to grow out of the forest itself. Wolves in human form stood guard at the entrance, their eyes widening as they saw their alpha carrying me. But none of them questioned it. None of them challenged. They simply opened the doors and let us pass. Kale carried me through halls lit by soft lamplight, past rooms where I could hear pack members sleeping or moving about, upstairs to the 3rd floor. He brought me to a room at the end of the hall, kicking the door open gently. The room was simple but comfortable, with a large bed covered in soft blankets, windows that looked out over the forest, and a bathroom visible through an open door. He set me down carefully on the bed, stepping back once he was certain I would not fall. "Rest," he said. "Sleep as long as you need. This room is yours for as long as you want it. The pack will not bother you, and I will post guards to ensure no one disturbs you." "Guards to keep me in or others out?" I asked, too tired to soften the question. "Out," he said without hesitation. "You are not a prisoner here. You are a guest and soon, if you choose, a member of this pack." "I do not know how to be part of a pack," I admitted. "Neither did I at first," he said with a small smile. "Being an alpha is lonely in its own way. But you learn. And I will help you learn." He moved toward the door then paused. "One more thing," he said. "Yes. Welcome home," he said simply. Then he was gone, closing the door softly behind him. I sat on the bed in the growing dawn light, processing everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. I had gone from complete isolation to protected pack member. From hunted creature to honored guest. From utterly alone to having an alpha king willing to risk everything to defend me. It was too much, too fast, too overwhelming. But as I finally lay back on the soft bed, as I pulled the blankets over my exhausted body, I realized something. For the first time since I became this thing, this monster, this impossible creature caught between darkness and wolf, I did not feel afraid. Felt safe. And that was the most terrifying and wonderful thing of all. The attack came 3 nights later, when the moon was dark and the stars hid behind clouds thick as wool. I woke to the sound of breaking glass and screaming. Not the screams of prey, but the war cries of wolves fighting for their lives. I was out of bed and running before my mind fully caught up to my body. The hallway was chaos. Pack members rushed past me, some in human form carrying weapons, others already shifted and racing on 4 legs toward the sounds of battle. What is happening? I grabbed a young wolf by the arm, stopping his frantic dash. He looked at me with wild eyes, barely recognizing me through his panic. "The council," he gasped. "They brought an army. Witches, hunters, wolves from the northern territories. They are demanding the Alpha King hand you over." My blood went cold. "Where is Kale?" "At the front line," the wolf said. "He will not let them through. He will not give you up." I released him and he ran, disappearing down the stairs. I stood frozen for one heartbeat, 2, 3. This was my fault. The council had come for me, and Kale was out there risking everything to protect me. His pack, his people, his life. All because he had chosen to stand between me and those who would cage me. The monster inside me stirred, responding to my fear and rage. For once I did not push it down. I ran toward the battle, my bare feet silent on stone floors, then wood, then earth as I burst out of the pack house. The scene before me was carnage. Wolves fought in the courtyard, their teeth and claws meeting silver blades and magical fire. Witches stood in formation, their hands weaving spells that created barriers and bindings. Hunters fired silver bullets from the tree line, their weapons modified to take down supernatural creatures. And in the center of it all stood Kale, his massive alpha form surrounded by enemies. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, his gray fur matted with blood, both his own and others. But he had not fallen. He would not fall. Not while his pack needed him. I watched as 3 Northern Territory wolves attacked him at once, their coordinated movements speaking of training and discipline. Kale took down 2 of them, his jaws closing around one's throat while his claws ripped open another's belly. But the third got through his defense, teeth sinking into his back leg. Kale stumbled, and in that moment of weakness, a witch's spell hit him full in the chest. Green light exploded across his body, and he went down hard. The courtyard seemed to freeze. Every wolf turned to look at their fallen alpha, horror and disbelief written across their features. The Northern Territory wolves howled in triumph. The witches began to advance, their hands already weaving capture spells. "Whoa." The word echoed through my mind, through my bones, through the very core of what I was. I would not let them take him. I would not let him die protecting me. I walked into the courtyard, and the shadows walked with me. They poured from my skin like smoke, like oil, like liquid night given form and purpose. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Frost spread across the ground from every step I took, flowers wilting and grass dying in my wake. Everyone stopped fighting. Every eye turned to watch me approach. "You want me," I called out, my voice carrying across the sudden silence. "Here I am. Leave the pack alone. Your fight is with me." A figure stepped forward from the witch formation, and I recognized the Magistra from the forest. Her gray hair seemed to glow in the darkness, her robes covered in so many protective sigils that they hurt to look at directly. "Finally," she said, satisfaction dripping from every word. "You show your true face." "This is my true face," I said, still walking forward. The shadows around me grew thicker, darker, more solid. "This is what you created when you played with forces you did not understand." "I created nothing," the Magistra said. "But I will unmake you." She raised her hands, and 10 other witches joined her, their voices rising in a chant that made the air vibrate. Binding magic, stronger than before, woven by 11 voices instead of 1. The spell hit me like a physical force, wrapping around my body, trying to compress the shadows back inside. I felt the bindings lock into place, felt them begin to drain my energy just as they had in the forest. But this time I did not fight them. This time I let them think they had won. I fell to my knees, gasping, the shadows retreating. The witches advanced, the Magistra leading them, silver collar in hand. You should have stayed hidden, little monster, she said, leaning down to fasten the collar around my neck. Now you belong to me. The silver touched my skin and I smiled. No, I whispered. You belong to me. The shadows exploded outward, but not from me. From every dark corner of the courtyard, from every patch of night between the trees, from every place where light did not reach. I had not been fighting the binding. I had been using it as a beacon, a call that reached out to every shadow within a mile. And they had answered. The darkness rose like a tidal wave, crashing over witches and hunters and enemy wolves with crushing force. Screams filled the air, but I felt no satisfaction in them. Only grim necessity. The Magistra stumbled back, her hands weaving defensive spells, but the shadows were everywhere now. They wrapped around her wrists, her ankles, pulling her down. What are you? She screamed, the question everyone kept asking. I stood, the silver collar falling from my neck, burned through by the intensity of what I had become. My body was changing, but not into the horror I had shown Kale in the forest. This was something different, something I had never allowed before. My skin did not split but transformed, becoming shadow given solid form. My bones did not break but multiplied and rearranged, creating a structure that was both familiar and completely alien. I grew taller, my limbs lengthening, my spine curving into a shape that could move on 2 legs or 4 with equal ease. My face elongated into something between wolf and woman and nightmare, my mouth filled with teeth that gleamed like obsidian. My eyes multiplied, opening across my face and neck and shoulders, each one reflecting a different angle of the world. And from my back, great wings unfurled, not made of feathers or membrane but of pure solidified darkness, each movement trailing shadows like smoke. This was what I truly was when I stopped fighting it. Not monster or wolf or shadow creature, but all of them and none of them, something entirely new. I am the consequence of your ambition, I said, and my voice came from everywhere and nowhere. I am what happens when you try to create weapons from stolen power. I am the cage that should never have been opened. And I am finished being afraid of what I am. I reached down and lifted the Magistra with one hand, holding her suspended in the air. She was still conscious, still trying to cast spells, but her magic slid off me like water off stone. You wanted to sell me, I said quietly, bringing her close enough that all of my eyes could focus on her terrified face. You wanted to auction me off to the highest bidder, to make me into property. But I am not property. I am not a weapon. I am not a tool to be used. I am a living being who deserves freedom just as much as you. I could have killed her. Should have killed her, by any measure of justice or revenge. But I had learned something in the past 3 days, living among Kale's pack. I had learned that mercy was not weakness. Mercy was the hardest form of strength. I set her down gently and released my hold. Go, I told her. Take your witches and your hunters and your hired wolves and leave. Tell the council what you saw here. Tell them that the creature they fear has chosen a side, and it is not theirs. Tell them that any who come for me will face not just my power, but the full might of the Western territories. The Magistra scrambled back, her dignity forgotten in her fear. She gathered her witches with sharp commands, and they retreated, stumbling over themselves in their haste to escape. The hunters followed, their weapons abandoned in the dirt. The Northern Territory wolves hesitated, looking between their fallen packmates and the shadow-winged creature standing in the center of the courtyard. Go, I repeated, and this time my voice carried the weight of command that I had never allowed myself to use before. They went, tucking their tails and running with the speed of prey fleeing a predator. Only when they were all gone, when the last footstep faded into the forest, did I let the transformation recede. The wings folded back into my shoulders, the extra eyes closed and disappeared, my body shrinking back down to something human-sized and shaped. I was myself again, standing in torn pajamas in the middle of a battlefield, surrounded by injured and staring wolves. Then I remembered. I ran to where he had fallen, dropping to my knees beside his massive wolf form. He was breathing but barely, his chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. The spell the witch had hit him with was still active. I could see the green light pulsing under his fur, wrapped around his heart. A killing curse, designed to stop his heart slowly, painfully. "No," I whispered, pressing my hands against his chest. "No, you do not get to die. Not for me. Not like this." The pack gathered around us, wolves and humans alike, forming a circle of silent witnesses. I could feel their fear of me warring with their loyalty to their alpha. Could feel them wondering if I would save him or finish what the witches started. I ignored them all. I pressed my forehead against Kale's, feeling the heat of his fever-hot skin against my own. "You told me I was not alone anymore," I said, tears falling onto his fur. "You cannot leave me alone now. You promised to help me learn how to be part of a pack. You cannot break that promise." I reached inside myself, down to the core of shadow and darkness that made me what I was. I had always used it to hurt, to defend, to destroy. But darkness was not just destruction. Darkness was also the quiet of night, the peace of shadows, the rest between heartbeats. Darkness could heal if guided by the right intention. I let the shadows flow from my hands into Kale's chest, not to harm but to hunt. They found the witch's curse wrapped around his heart, green and pulsing and squeezing tighter with every second. My shadows wrapped around it, cocooning it, smothering it. The green light fought back, but it was designed to kill wolves, not to defend against what I was. Slowly, carefully, I pulled the curse out. It resisted, tried to dig deeper, but I was stronger. I was always going to be stronger than someone else's magic. I pulled and pulled until finally, the curse came free, dissolving in my hands like mist in sunlight. Kale's breathing immediately deepened, his heartbeat strengthening. His eyes opened, golden and bright even in his wolf form. He shifted back to human, the transformation smooth despite his injuries. "You saved me," he said, his voice rough with pain and wonder. "You came back for me," I replied. "I could not do any less." He sat up slowly, wincing at his wounds but alive, gloriously alive. His hand reached up to cup my cheek, his thumb brushing away tears I had not realized were still falling. "You let them see," he said softly. "You let them see all of you." "I had to," I said. "To protect them. To protect you. And I am not afraid anymore." "Afraid of what?" "Of what I am," I said. "Of what I can become. You helped me see that I can choose what I do with this power. That having the ability to destroy does not mean I must destroy." Kale smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "You are remarkable," he said. Around us, the pack began to shift, those who had been in wolf form returning to human. They knelt, one by one, in the traditional sign of respect and acceptance. Even covered in blood and exhausted from battle, they offered their loyalty. Not to me as a weapon or a tool or a monster, but to me as a person who had chosen to stand with them when she could have run. An older woman, her gray hair streaked with blood, spoke first. "We thought you were a threat," she said. "We were afraid of what you might do to our alpha, to our pack. But tonight you proved that you are one of us. You fought for us. You saved our alpha. You are pack." The words settled over me like a blanket, warm and heavy and real. I had never thought I would belong to anything again, much less something as sacred as a pack bond. I do not know how to be pack, I said honestly, looking around at all the faces watching me. None of us do at first, the older woman replied. You learn by living it, by choosing every day to stay, to fight for each other, to bleed together and heal together. And you have already started. Kale stood, offering me his hand. I took it, letting him pull me to my feet. He kept holding my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. The council will not give up, he said, addressing the pack. Tonight was a warning, a message about what happens when we defy them. They will come again with more numbers, more power, more determination. Any who wish to leave to seek safety in another territory may do so without shame. I will not force anyone to stay for a fight that is not theirs. Not a single wolf moved. Not one person stepped back or looked away. This is our fight, a young man said. His arm wrapped around a woman's shoulders. You are our alpha and she is pack. We do not abandon pack. Others echoed his sentiment, voices rising in agreement and determination. Kale's hand tightened around mine. His emotion evident even though he tried to hide it. Then we prepare, he said, his voice carrying the authority of an alpha king. We strengthen our defenses, reach out to allied packs, and we stand together. The council thinks they can intimidate us into submission. We will show them that the Western territories bow to no one. The pack dispersed, moving to tend to the wounded and repair the damage. But many stopped to touch my shoulder or nod in respect as they passed. Acceptance, hard-won and genuine. Finally, Kale and I were alone in the courtyard, standing among the debris of battle as dawn began to break over the horizon. What happens now? Yes. Now we heal, he said. We rebuild. We prepare for whatever comes next. Together. Together, I agreed. He turned to face me fully, both of his hands now holding mine. I need to tell you something, he said. What? When I was lying there, dying, trapped in that curse, he began, his golden eyes intense on mine. The only thing I could think about was that I never told you the truth. What truth? That from the moment you caught me in your shadows, from the moment you showed me what real power looks like, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. Not as a weapon or an ally or a political asset, but as someone I want beside me, not because you are useful but because you make me feel less alone. My breath caught in my throat. Kale, I am not good at this, I said. I do not know how to be close to someone without hurting them. Then we will learn together, he said simply. I am not asking you to be perfect. I am asking you to try. To stay. To give us a chance. I thought about all the reasons I should say no. All the ways this could end in disaster. All the pain that caring about someone could bring. But then I thought about the alternative. Going back to my cave, to my isolation, to my carefully constructed walls that kept everyone out and me trapped inside. And I realized that was not living. That was just existing. Surviving. And I was so tired of just surviving. Yes, I said, the word coming easier this time. Yes, I will stay. Yes, I will try. Yes to all of it. Kale's smile could have lit the entire forest. He pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me, and I let myself lean into his warmth. We are going to face so many challenges, he murmured into my hair. The council, other packs who fear what we represent together, enemies we have not even imagined yet. I know, I said. And we might not win, he continued. We might lose everything. I know that too. But even knowing that, he said, pulling back just enough to look into my eyes. Even knowing all the ways this could end badly, I would still choose this moment. I would still choose you. Tears fell again, but this time they were not from fear or grief. They were from something I had almost forgotten I could feel. Oh, I spent so long believing I was just a monster, I whispered. That all I could do was hurt and destroy and push everyone away. But you looked at me, at all of me, at the worst parts of what I am, and you still chose to stand beside me. You taught me that I could be more than what I was created to be. That I could choose who I want to become. And I choose this. I choose Pack. I choose you. The sun broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. The light hit the courtyard, illuminating the blood and broken weapons and scorched earth. But it also illuminated the Pack members working together to clean up, to help the wounded, to rebuild what had been broken. It illuminated Kale's face, tired and scarred and beautiful. And it illuminated something inside me that I had thought was dead. The belief that maybe, just maybe, monsters could find redemption. Not by becoming something else, but by choosing to use what they were for something good. The Alpha King thought I was his prey, I said softly, remembering the title that started all of this. And I thought I was just a monster trapped in a cage of my own making. But we were both wrong. Kale smiled, understanding dawning in his eyes. We were both already free, he said. We just needed each other to realize it. I looked out at the Pack, at the territory I had chosen to defend, at the man who had chosen to defend me. And I finally understood what the old woman meant. Being Pack was not about perfection or strength or never being afraid. It was about showing up anyway. About choosing to stay when running would be easier. About believing that together, broken pieces could create something beautiful. The monster inside me settled, finally at peace. Because it was no longer a monster trapped in a cage. It was power with purpose. Darkness with direction. A weapon that had chosen to become a shield. And that made all the difference. Come on, Kale said, tugging my hand gently. Let us go help our Pack rebuild. Pack. The words filled me with warmth I had never known. As we walked toward the others, toward the work that waited, toward the uncertain future that stretched before us, I realized something profound. The cage had never been made of shadows or magic or the circumstances of my creation. The cage had been built from fear and loneliness and the belief that I did not deserve connection. And the moment I chose to break those bars, the moment I chose to let someone in, the cage vanished like it had never existed at all. I was free. We were free. And whatever came next, we would face it together under the open sky, with nothing holding us back except our own choices. The Alpha King had thought I was his prey. And I had thought I was trapped. But the truth was simpler and more beautiful than either of us could have imagined. We were never hunter and hunted, captor and captive, alpha and monster. We were two souls who had been lost in our own darkness, who found each other by accident, and who chose by intention to step into the light together. And that choice, that single decision to try, to hope, to believe in something beyond survival, changed everything. The cage was open. The monster was free. But more importantly, the girl had finally learned that the scariest thing in the world was not her power or her darkness or the thing she could become. The scariest and bravest thing was allowing herself to be loved, exactly as she was, shadows and all. And once she learned that lesson, nothing in this world or any other could ever trap her again.